Daniel Steigerwald is going to explore this. Let's all give him a huge round of applause. Thank you.
Do you hear me? Where's my talk? Oh, here's my talk. So, hi. My name is Daniel Steigerwald, and I will tell you something about the Bitcoin, the end game. Does it work? Yeah, it's working. Great. I'm not native speaker, so I have a lot of slides, in case you wouldn't understand me. So a quick review. What is Bitcoin? It's just one slide. Bitcoin is money that is not broken. The money that the state forces us to use, fiat money, is broken. Bitcoin isn't, simply. What does it mean when money isn't broken? Money does not lose value. Money is permissionless and can be taken away. And money evolves. Broken money has a significant impact on society. What happens when we all use money that isn't broken? The important lesson, first lesson, that learning Bitcoin is learning money, economics, and the state. And if we understand something, we can predict it. So, some people think that Bitcoin endgame is Bitcoin standard. Is the situation when we use Bitcoin as a unit of account. We measure the value of goods and services in Bitcoin prices. Why should we do that? Because Bitcoin is the hardest money ever created. No inflation. And the money works as a meter for measuring preferences. The better the meter, the better the measurement. Let's talk about inflation. And important disclaimer first. The problem with economic terms is that the words often have multiple meanings. For example, an investment. For some people, leftist, politics, any spending is an investment. So before arguing with someone, agree on definition first. So, inflation is not a rise in prices. I know you heard it often from TV shows that, inflation is a rise in prices, but that's not correct. Inflation causes prices to rise. Price can rise for a variety of reasons. Labeling rising prices as inflation is a huge mistake. You know that words have some meaning. Inflation is actually the depreciation of money itself. The problem is that the two cannot be distinguished. Rise in prices and depreciation of the money. So, quick recapitulation. Inflation is not a rise in prices. Inflation causes prices to rise. Prices can rise for a variety of reasons. Labeling rising prices as inflation is a huge mistake. Inflation is the depreciation of money itself. The problem is that the two situations are very hard to distinguish. And I won't even talk about how inflation is measured, because that's a complete alchemy. Take a look at this graph. It shows housing prices in Europe in the last 10, 12 years. The theorist says that the money is continuously devaluing, other assets are monetized to protect capital against inflation. You know that story. But all these countries, except the Czech Republic, but the euro and the Czech crown value almost the same. All those countries use the same money, but the real estate prices rise a lot in some places and little in others. Economists argue about what the interest rate, the price of money, and the resulting inflation should be. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Any interest rate the central bank set will always suit some and harm other. You can see the Spain and Italy, the prices are almost the same, but in other countries with the same money, the prices, the numbers went up. So we can't, when the central bank sets the interest rate, it's very hard to distinguish the money depreciation and some goods or services are just more expensive. And it's much worse because when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. For example, if an employee is rewarded for the numbers of cars sold monthly, they will try to sell more even at a loss. So, macroeconomics indicators are very tricky. We have an interest rate, inflation, and even GDP, and those indicators are tricky and gamed. But the good news is that the Bitcoin standard eliminates them because manipulating Bitcoin is impossible. Central banks have no role in the Bitcoin standard. The Bitcoin standard eliminates false indicators that only confuse people and make them unhappy or unnecessarily happy. Bitcoin monetary policy is immutable and predictable, so the best monetary policy is no monetary policy at all. It looks like that's time and the number of coins, and it's almost perfect graph. There's no manipulation. So macroeconomic indicators are tricky. It can be and is artificially increased. Inflation is a lie, so is real GDP, because real GDP prices and the prices are a lie because of inflation. So these indicators are tricky, but it's even worse because they are misinterpreted. I recently read some paper from economist Jesus Fernandez Villavert, and he was measuring GDP versus demographic transition, and he realized, you probably know the term Japanese stagnation. It's super common to say, whoa, Japan economy was good and then was bad because there was a long stagnation. But this econom actually compared GDP with the per working age adult or per hour worked. Japan has outperformed all advanced economies in the world. There is no Japanese stagnation, just fewer Japanese workers. So these macroeconomic indicators are tricky and misinterpreted too. Because with Bitcoin standard and no central bank, there's no point to manipulate Bitcoin. The Bitcoin standard makes it possible for private sector to finally make economic calculation much more efficient. It eliminates the noise from the economic calculation that the central bank and the government put into it by monetizing its deficit. The noise, the term malinvestments, just wrong investment decision. So, what about mortgages? Buying a house is generally a good investment because even without any appreciation in the house's value, the mortgage payment cost will become less as inflation eats away at the value of fiat money. 500 monthly mortgage payment with 5% inflation will be roughly the same as 100 payment in 30 years. And if you are an honest person, you should pay attention. Isn't that weird? Is it honest? Is it fair? People who didn't take out a mortgage are paying someone else's mortgage. So if you have mortgage and your friend doesn't have a mortgage, he or she is paying your mortgage through the inflation. That's not fair. But if the world moves to Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin is always rising, the cost of that mortgage payment will be constantly going up. So to buy a house, the value needs to constantly go up at the rate that exceeds the increased value in Bitcoin. It's paradox. Mortgages will be more expensive, but housing will be cheaper. People will not use houses as a store of value, and savings will be finally profitable. We can't save efficiently money right now because of the money printing and loss in the value. And this is a good thing because it's fair. And prices going up, down isn't the same situation. No, inflation is stealing, deflation isn't. Deflation is natural because progress is natural. Deflation is natural because progress is natural. Housing should not be considered as investment unless it actively generates income for you via rent. With hard money like a Bitcoin, people don't need to store wealth in their homes. People also don't need to take out mortgages as they can save up the cash to pay for it. Bitcoin allows people to save money. It's probably, I will repeat it, mortgages will be more expensive, but housing will be cheaper and saving will be profitable. This is a good thing because it's fair. Will Bitcoin become the standard? Eventually, it will, but nobody knows when. The good news is that it doesn't matter because the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. So some of us are already living in the Bitcoin standard while the other people are still living in the fiat standard. How many people does a monetary system need to survive? At least a few millions. It's based on just simple observation that there are countries with similar population and their own money. How many people does a monetary system need to be stable? I don't know, at least 100 million. And no, it's an estimation. No one knows for sure. But as I said, it doesn't matter because the progress, the future is not evenly distributed. So for some of us, we are already in a Bitcoin standard. Bitcoin standard, you probably know what it is, quick recapitulation, but it's not the main, Bitcoin standard in my eyes, it's not the end game of the Bitcoin, it's something else. Remember, I told you, learning Bitcoin is learning money, economics, and the state. And where there will be enough amount of the people that who knows that the money is broken and the central banks had just one job, don't print money, and they are printing money. You know that something is very wrong. Obvious conclusion is we don't need the state at least for the money, and if we don't need the state for the money, do we need the state for the other things? For many people, the state is the best. It's not idle, but it's the best what we know. I love this quote from my favorite economist, Thomas Sowell. The most basic question is not what is best, but who shall decide what is the best? And that's the problem with the state, because we should control the state through the voting, through the election. But the voting process itself is overloaded. With just one vote, a voter, a citizen, should decide an infinite number of matters. That's why election discussion, campaigning are so desperately pointless and detached from the reality. You have one vote, and you should decide endless issues with just one vote. So it's broken, it's overloaded, and there is a solution. And in this solution, we just can't kill the state right now, even if we don't like the state. The state is process. We can't kill the state because we have the pension. We can't stop pensions because old people depend on it. We can't kill the state because we don't know how to do that actually. Ask any of your anarcho-capitalist friends how we should cancel of the state, and you will hear no answer because nobody knows that. But I think there is a solution, and it's the deconstruction of the state into smaller units. While some parts of the state can easily be sold in an auction, for example, others cannot because we don't know if that is what the citizens, the people, want. For example, state roads cannot be sold, just sold, because probably another state would most likely buy them. However, we can convert state roads into joint stock company and give each citizen one share so the citizens can exercise shareholder rights. Half of the people even doesn't vote because they don't think the voting makes any sense. But what if they could vote about the specific issue, just the roads? Bitcoin endgame, to me, is the deconstruction of the state because the Bitcoin standard is not compatible with the state because when the people know what the money is, how it works, they will not trust in the state. And what next? What to do? I believe we want to return the state to the citizen because the citizens actually do not own the state. Ownership is defined as the ability to control something. Do we control the state? I told you, one vote, the endless amount of issues, the people, citizens can vote as a crazy any party and nothing changes. That's the problem with broken, overloaded elections. So to me, the deconstruction of the state, how to deconstruct the state is the question that almost no opponent of the state can answer. And it is the most important question of life, universe, and everything. I don't have the definite all answers yet, but I have many ideas. I make a few talks in the Czech talks about the deconstruction of the state. And I decided to start a blog, podcast, write a book. You can find details on DS Show, Deconstruction of the State, or Dan Steigerwald, my name and surname. And I hope in the next year I will talk about how to deconstruct the state properly here in this Bitcoin conference. So thank you for your attention.